Hey everyone, today I wanted to rank all 9 albums of one of my favorite bands, Trivium. I wanted to rank them particularly because the release of What the Dead Men Say was only about 2 weeks ago, and I've gotten a good listen of it, and I wanted to now put it in my ranking. Now, all of these could go up and down, but I've been a fan of this band since the album In Waves came out, and so I think this is pretty much where they stay. Maybe the new album will move up or down on the list, but for now, this is going to be my ranking. And so I do like every one of their albums, so it's not like there's a single one of them that I dislike. This is probably my second or third favorite band behind Metallica, and so um, there's not a single, even really almost song on these albums that I straight up dislike, but I do have my preferences like any other fan of a band. So, starting off this list with their first album, and that is Ember Inferno. I do own the extended edition, so there's a few. I think there might be just like one extra song on here, maybe two, but it's just the album that I go to the least of all their albums. They did come out with a different version of this recently. That's like the only one of theirs that I don't count because it's the same songs. It's just something. I think it's just like a remastered edition of it or something. But some of the good songs on it, at least my favorites, are "Pillars of Serpents," "If I Could Collapse the Masses," and "My Hatred" are probably my favorites. Demon is another really good one on here. But yeah, like I said, it's just the one that I go to the least. The sound quality isn't as good on this one. You'll notice as you go through their albums, they get better. But yeah, I mean, for an album that came out in I think 2003, it's their first album. It's still pretty good though. So coming in at second is their third album, and that is the Crusade. Another pretty good album. My favorite song off of this is Entrance of the Conflagration, a song with pretty dark meaning, actually. It was about a real life murder case where a woman drowned her children in the bathtub, and they wrote a song about it. And it's pretty dark, but it's actually like a really good song, and it's pretty heavy. Unrepentant is another good song, Ignition and Detonation. But yeah, I mean, there's not really a bad song on any of these albums. It's just, like I said, there has to be a ranking, and so that's why the Crusade comes in at number 8. Number 7 is actually their new album, and that is What the Dead Men Say. It's been out for only 2 weeks now, but I have heard the songs quite a lot ever since they've been releasing the singles. And this album is kind of hit and miss for me. There's a lot on it that I really like, such as the first 4 songs or first 5, whatever you want to say, with the intro song I'm not going to actually count. So the first 4 songs I really like, which is What the Dead Men Say, Catastrophist, Amongst the Shadows and the Stones, and Bleed Into Me, I think are really good. But the second half of the album, there's only 2 songs I like, which is Sickness Unto You and Sending the Arc to Fear, or Bending the Arc to Fear. But yeah, I do think this is a pretty good album. I was a little bit disappointed, but I still like it a lot, and I'll be listening. I've been listening to this nonstop ever since it came out. So my favorite song off of this, for sure, and is one of my favorite songs from them in the past few years, is the title, or the album title track, which is What the Dead Men Say. So next, number 6 is Ascendancy. Now this is a lot of people's favorite album or one of their favorites of Trivium. The only reason it's a little bit lower for me is I don't listen to it as much as the other ones, and I don't own the extended edition of this album. I didn't know there was one until after I'd bought it, but either way, I mean, it's still a really good album. It has some of their more iconic songs on it, such as Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Martyr, Drowned and Torn Asunder, A Gunshot to the Head of Trepidation, Like the Flies. There's a lot of good songs on here, and I like hearing them, I think, better live, actually, since I've seen them live now twice, and I'll probably see them 3 times as long as they still are able to come to my town. But these are songs I actually prefer to hear live, and so on the album, it's not that I don't like them, but I don't listen to them as much as, some of their other albums. So still a great album. But number 5 is Silence in the Snow, and the album before this, or on the tour of the album before this, Matt Heafy damaged his voice, and so for this album they did kind of he didn't do screaming or much screaming. I believe that it was either the bassist or the drummer or something did the screaming vocals on it. But this one has the least amount of any of their albums. It's a lot softer. Instrumentally, it's not as heavy, and it's more just technical. And I still like it, but I would say the only reason I do like this album more than any of the other, or I put this fifth and not like lower down, is because I like every song on the album, and I don't mind that it's a little bit slower for something different. There's a really good song on here. Actually, I really like them all, but The Ghost That's Haunting You is really good. Until the World Goes Cold, Silence in the Snow. Breathe in the Flames I really like. Dead and Gone. But yeah, all of them are really good, and I saw them on the tour, which was last year, or the last album's tour, the Sin the Sentence tour, and they played these songs live, and it was really cool seeing him switch guitars, and he had his white guitar that he used on this album, and it was, I don't know, just seeing this album played live is also a lot better now that they can play it heavier. I do like it a lot more ever since then, but it's still a really good album, and if you're not as into like heavier metal music, then this would be the album for you to maybe check this band out with, because my friend didn't really want to listen to this band until I showed him this album, and now he's a fan of this band. So coming in at number 4 was the album before their most recent one, and that is The Sin and the Sentence. It's really hard to see the album cover here, but this album is another one that's pretty much great from start to finish. There's only really 2 songs on it that I don't really listen to, but my 2 favorite songs are the first and the last songs. The Sin and the Sentence and Thrown into the Fire are awesome. Hearing them play this album live was amazing. There really isn't a bad song on here. The Heart From Your Hate is really good. Betrayer, The Wretchedness Inside, The Revanchist. This album is really great, and it was good to see them go from Silence in the Snow, which was a lighter tone album, to a really heavy album, and especially getting a new drummer and how talented he is of a drummer. And you can see in this album and then their most recent album really shows off his skills on the drums. So that's why this one comes in at number 4. And so these top 3 are my favorite albums of this band that I've listened to the most out of any of their discography. And this first one, or number 3 I guess I should say, is In Waves. This was the first album I ever heard by them. The first song I ever heard by them was Built to Fall. My friend recommended me this band, and ever since then I've loved this band. Whenever I used to work at a grocery store in like the freezer section, I would listen to this album on repeat over and over and over, and I loved it. I have the deluxe version of this, so it has quite a few songs. It's got 18 songs on it. Some of my favorites are In Waves, Black, Built to Fall, Drowning in Slow Motion, A Gray So Dark, Of All These Yesterdays. This is a really great album. I saw them on this tour as well, and they were very good live. This is probably the best band I've ever seen live, so if you get a chance and you haven't listened to this album by them, this is a really great one. Next is Vengeance Falls. This came out a few years ago. It's probably about 2013 now. This is another one that I worked at a dollar store, and before we opened, just listened to this album on repeat. Not a single song on here I don't like. Some of my personal favorites are Brave the Storm, Strife, No Way to Heal, At the End of This War, and my favorite off of this album is Through Blood and Dirt and Bone. Great album. I know a lot of people actually were putting this one, not everyone, but everyone has their own personal ranking, but I found a lot of people had this one lower on the list of their favorite albums by this band, but I really like it. It's my second favorite for that reason, obviously. But number 1, this has been my favorite album ever since I listened to it. It's a lot of people's favorite album by this band, and that is Shogun. This is probably the most perfect album. It's great from start to finish. Every song is basically almost equally good as the last. It's got some of their biggest hits off of it. Down from the Sky, Throes of Perdition, Shogun is a really good song and a great way to end the album. You know, this song or this album is great from start to finish. There's nothing about it that I disliked. This was, I think, the second album by them I listened to, and ever since then it's been my favorite. It's like I mentioned, it's probably the band's most popular. This is, I think, when a lot of fans were really starting to get into them. Then during this time, or Ascendancy, and whenever I listened to In Waves and this, it was definitely that they've become some of my favorite albums that I've listened to on repeat just over and over. So yeah, that's my ranking of all 9 of the Trivium albums. I own all of them, like I just showed on a CD. I still collect CDs, but if you'd like to see any other rankings of bands like Breaking Benjamin, I own all of their albums. Metallica, I own all of their albums. So if you'd like to see either of those 2 bands, or if you'd like me to do any sort of like album collection, because I have plenty of CDs, so you know, just let me know in the comment section. Also, what's your ranking of Trivium's albums? What did you think of What the Dead Men Say? And I appreciate you watching my videos, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.